There are also some aftermarket exhausts you can get, and I've contemplated getting them. I'm not, like, I don't think I'm going to do it anytime soon. This is where it cuts to me ordering one or fitting one. Yeah, it's exactly what it looks like. Hello guys, and welcome back to TierSpec TV. Yes, the inevitable has happened. In the video where I installed the Forge Motorsport air intake to my Suzuki Jimny, I mentioned that at some point in the future I may want to install an aftermarket exhaust to it as well, of which there are many available out on the market. And I'm sitting here now today with the Forge Motorsport exhaust for the Suzuki Jimny. Having already gotten the Forge air intake, it made sense to go with Forge again for the exhaust, I thought. And while an aftermarket exhaust can improve the performance of a vehicle, I'm not entirely convinced that's going to be the case with my 102 horsepower Suzuki Jimny, and I don't think Forge themselves, at least on the product page, make any claim that this is going to improve performance either. But let's face it, we're all here for the sound, aren't we? It's all about having fun. So that's what we are doing today, is installing this. It's a 3-piece kit with the center pipe, back box, and then this is just a finisher tailpipe thing, I think they call it. We've got a gasket and a couple of bolts thrown in there as well. It's a catback system, of course. We don't want to remove the catalytic converter because then this would be illegal and I will be in trouble. And I did record a clip of what it sounds like before, or with the stock factory exhaust as well. Not that it's anything to write home about. In fact, I wasn't even sure if I should bother showing it, but for the sake of a comparison, here's how it sounds now. So let us do a quick unwrapping of all this. Look how clean and shiny that is. That is the cleanest this exhaust will ever be. And some very nice welds all around as also. So there we have the back box section with Forge embossed. Is that what you call embossed? Whatever. Written right there onto the back box. That looks really, really smart. So I guess that is the bit that will actually be pointing down. So you can see that from underneath. Really, really cool. And then we have the center pipe here. There we go. Look how good that looks. And then we have the little finisher piece, but I'll save that for later because I know what's in there. We'll do that at the end, but let's get rid of all this bubble wrap, get the car jacked up, and get this on. Well, that was quite a job in itself. Removing these two sort of sprung bolts. I don't think I've ever seen that before, to be honest. I'm sure there's a technical name for it, which someone will correct me on in the comments down below. But yeah, that took quite a lot of force to get off. First, just with the power tool, I think I kind of loosened them up a bit, and then I just couldn't on one side fit that tool in there. So the other one I had to use this, but once it was loosened up, all good. But I guess it was just like, it was that tight because of the tension on it. I mean, it was tight all the way to the end. You know, normally bolts start to loosen up a bit as you go, but this was required force right till it was coming out. Well, hopefully so that was the bit that connects the center pipe to the front section where the cat is. Hopefully the two that join the center pipe to the back box will be easier, because I think that's what these are replacements for, because they don't look like these. So I'm guessing that's for the back box bit, which looked like just conventional bolts. So hopefully that's a bit easier. You mother... Okay, so I guess this is the part where I need to explain everything that just happened. It's now the day after from when I started this video, because I got stuck on these two nuts that connected the back box, and yeah, they were rounded and rusty and I couldn't find a way to get them off. And unfortunately, I just ran out of time. I had somewhere else to be, so I had to throw in the towel for yesterday. But I did go out and buy a twist socket set, it's called, after someone recommended this to me. So on one of the recent videos where I was working on the Defender, there was a nut that got rounded off that I couldn't get off, and someone in the comments recommended looking at, I think it was called Irwin socket sets, which are designed for getting off rounded nuts. And I didn't get a Irwin branded set specifically, but I found an equivalent at my local automotive shop of these twist socket sets. So this, I mean, it's not really a socket, it's a nut basically, but you put it in your socket, and then inside, I don't know if you can see it, but it's like almost look like the barrel of a gun. You've got this barrel effect, twisty barrel effect inside, which I guess essentially you put it on your rounded nut, and because of this twisted effect, it's when you start turning it kind of digs into the nut. And it actually worked. Which, I mean, yeah, sounds weird, right? Like, buy a tool that does a certain job and it works, don't be shocked. But I don't know, I've just dealt with so many rounded nuts on Land Rovers over the years, never knowing that this was a thing until I saw that comment on the video. And it actually worked. I mean, it still took a hell of a lot of force and fidgeting around to get it in the right position and get it off, partly because there just isn't very much space up in that corner. So it still took me a good half an hour or so, if not more, to get 2 nuts off. But they did come off in the end, and now I've got the whole exhaust, or the center section of the exhaust, sitting here right next to me. And if you look at that, oh, let me see if I can get it in the camera. It's not going to focus, is it? I don't think so. No. Well, these are the nuts that came off, and they are completely mangled. Maybe I'll just put a picture up on the screen. They are completely mangled now. I mean, they were already rounded off, but I guess this twist socket kind of digging into it has just chewed it apart, which doesn't matter at all. I'm not precious about it, of course. I just wanted to get them off. But yeah, really cool to try something new out, and that actually works. So the person who made that comment, I owe you a beer, if not more, after that. Really, really useful. So that's going to be a good thing to have in the future. Really, really glad that worked. Now, the idea with this exhaust mod is that you reuse these nuts for the back box. That definitely isn't going to happen because, yeah, these aren't going back on. And a little bit disappointed that you don't get new nuts in the kit for the exhaust, because they supply the bolts, but they supply the bolts because the threads are welded onto the center section. So, which is great for taking it off, because it means you only have to get the nut off the back. So you don't have two, things to contend with and potentially round off. So you're only twisting on one side the nut that you have to remove. But with the thread being welded to the center section on the factory exhaust, it means that there's nothing obviously on the new exhaust. So you need a bolt to replace the thread which is welded onto that. But then why not just include a new pair of nuts as well? I mean, yeah, my Jimny's only 4 years old and has done 30,000 kilometers, and that's what the nut looks like. We do have salted roads in the winter, but it's not like, I'm used to working on a 20-year-old Defender where you're just like, yeah, okay, makes sense that it's so rusty. But no, 4-year-old car, 30,000 kilometers, and these are completely done for. So unless you're doing this mod on like a brand new Jimny where it's gonna look nice and shiny and just come straight off, yeah, I feel like that's going to be a common issue. So a bit disappointed for the price of this kit that you don't get 2 new nuts to just go along with that, with 2 new bolts. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But anyway, it is what it is. They're off now, and just need to get the back box out now. It's still hanging up there just off of the exhaust mounts. Center section is off, as I said, sitting here right next to me on the floor. And then we can just get the new bits in, hopefully, and then it's just 2, 4 bolts, tighten them up. Really impressed that worked. I thought it would be a bit of a gimmick, if I'm being a bit cynical, but I didn't think that would work. That just seemed like such a simple solution. And I'm just shocked that I've never known about that until now. So now we can take a good look at difference between old and new. And from the outside, it may not appear that they're that different. Obviously, this is a different finish. It's shiny and new compared to this, but it's not like one is significantly larger than the other. But obviously, there'll be differences internally, I guess, that we can't see. So back box here, we've got different flanges here, where it attaches to the center pipe. On here, it's very thick. Here, this piece is just kind of folded over. So this should be better for getting on and off, because when you've got this folded over here, it actually makes it quite difficult to get a socket into there, which was part of the challenge I had when getting it off. Also got a little bit more support for the exhaust mount here. You've got two pieces coming off, where you've just got the one on the standard, and then obviously a more prominent tailpipe, and some really, really pretty looking welding going on all around here as well. And then sort of similar story for this one. I think it's slightly larger in diameter, just judging by my eye. It does look a little bit larger. And then again, got a bit more support for the exhaust mount over on this side, and thicker flanges over here without the welded on studs, as I mentioned before. So we're going to be using those bolts that come with the kit for this part, which is where the back box goes. Possibly using some bubble wrap here on this bar, and I can rest the exhaust on that without scratching it while I sort out the mounts. Aha, that's one in. There we go. Back box is in. Nice. Now the big bits. Center pipe and back box is now in. I just had a bit of a physics, maths, brain teaser trying to get the exhaust over the center pipe, over the last bend of the center pipe, over the rear axle to meet up with the back box. And I just could not figure it out. And then realized that the car was, of course, jacked up on the axle, thereby pushing it up, compressing it, and meaning there was less of a gap between the rear axle and the fuel tank, which is right in front of it, for me to be able to get it in. If you were up on a lift, it would be no problem, because you could drop the other end of the exhaust lower to get a better angle to get the other end of the exhaust in over the axle. But I don't have that luxury right now. So I dropped it off of the axle stands, and just for a moment, I jacked it up off of the tow bar. I don't mean the tow bar that you connect a trailer to, I mean the bar that is there as part of the chassis to connect the tow bar to. Jacked it up on that just for a moment so it's not on the axle, and then very easily could just slide the exhaust over, and that was that. Nice and simple. So now the whole exhaust system is in, just off of the rubber exhaust mounts, and then I am next just going to do up these 4 bolts, and then we should be good to go. And I just remembered we will of course need the gasket as well when we put it back together. Would not want to tighten everything up and then realize that I've forgotten that. Right, here we go. First start up. Hopefully it's been worth the wait. Sounds fruity. spent a couple weeks with this exhaust on now, and what do I think? Well, before I bought it, I did what you do, and I went online and watched some videos to get an idea of what it sounded like. And to be honest, based on those, I actually expected it to be a bit louder. However, don't get me wrong, I was actually quite pleased that it was quieter than I expected, because I was a little bit concerned that it was going to be like antisocial loud and kind of, you know, attract the sort of attention that you don't want. So when it was a bit quieter than I thought, but still had the nice tone, which definitely comes across on video, I was quite pleased. But if there was one thing which I was maybe a little bit disappointed with, was the sound from inside, because you don't actually hear that much of it, in my opinion. So I think when you're at low speeds, when you're pulling away, when you're kind of maneuvering, saying around at a car park, something like that, using a bit of throttle, a bit of revs, then you can hear the exhaust. But when you're properly cruising, then you don't really hear any of it. I mean, wind noise, tire noise, the distinct whine from this drivetrain, all of that drowns it out. And then when you're accelerating hard, as I think I've demonstrated before, then the noise from the Forge air intake, I think, dominates. It drowns out any noise you get from the exhaust, or at least I don't notice any difference between having the stock exhaust plus the air intake and having the Forge exhaust and the Forge intake. To me, they sound the same. The air intake just makes a louder noise. So at first I was maybe a little bit disappointed. However, I had an experience a couple of weeks ago which really showed where this exhaust shines, and that was off-roading. So a couple of weeks back, Tour Overland came to visit us, and we spent a day off-roading with them. And to be honest, it was also kind of the first proper off-road outing I'd had with the Jimny since getting it. And obviously when you're off-roading, you're generally going quite slowly, and as I mentioned, that's sort of where the exhaust, where you can actually hear the exhaust, is at lower speeds, because you don't have all the other kind of environmental noise around you. So when you're off-roading, you're going slowly, but you're probably using quite a lot of throttle to get over obstacles, to go up hills, things like that. So that was where, for me, the exhaust became more enjoyable, because I could actually hear it. And then Tour Overland, they were also filming throughout the day as well, making a video for their channel. So at various points, they were standing behind my Jimny when I was driving around on tracks, going up hills and whatever. And they all came up to me at different points and said, "That's got quite a nice burble." And then when I watched the footage back as well, I was also really pleased at how good it sounded. And I might put in a clip from that video in right now. But the full video from that day will be up very shortly after this one, so go watch that as well if you want to see more sounds and off-roading from the Jimny, as well as the others that we were off-roading with. So for me, off-roading, as I said, is really where this exhaust kind of shines and where you can enjoy it to its maximum. I don't know if maybe you have the stock air intake and the exhaust, then it might make more sense. I don't know. But if you just want more noise out of your Jimny, then the air intake is a much cheaper modification, but to me makes a much bigger difference to the sound. But if you can afford it, then the exhaust, I guess, is a lot of fun as well if you do off-roading. I'm going up a hill now, so it's a nice chance to rev it out a little bit. Yeah, that intake does sound cool. So let's talk about the installation process now. As I already demonstrated, the only real problem I ran into were those two nuts on the back box, which were completely crusty, despite this car being, you know, relatively new if I compare it to, say, my Defender, which is much older and has done much greater mileage. However, I will admit that, you know, the placement of those nuts is a prime position to receive a marinade of salt and mud. So I guess it wouldn't necessarily take that much for them to get into that condition. So that was a bit of a pain, but, you know, I'll take the positive away from it. I learned something new. I got this twist socket set, you know, so I got a new tool in my arsenal that I have no doubt I'll be using again in the future. So yeah, I can only take a positive away from it there. And I did end up replacing those nuts and the bolts with a pair of galvanized nuts and bolts just from my local hardware store. So if I ever need to remove them again, I hopefully won't run into that issue. However, that I think would be my biggest critique of this exhaust kit, is why Forge don't just include the nuts when they already do the bolts. I think for the price of the exhaust, it's a bit of a shame, really, that they don't include that for you. I mean, if my Jimny, with its relatively low mileage, had nuts in that condition, I would imagine that most people who are changing the exhaust do. I don't know. Anyway, that was my experience. I just think it's odd that, you know, you're getting the bolts anyway, just throw in the nuts. But if not, you know, as I said, I just bought some galvanized ones from my local hardware store, so it was an easy swap once I'd gotten the old ones off. Other than that, installation was fine. It's one of those things that, you know, once you've done it once, you kind of know it, and if I had to do it again now, I could probably do it much, much more quickly, just because I'm not as familiar with the Jimny. I'm much more familiar working on my Defender, so some things are still kind of new to me, a bit like those sprung bolts, if that's the right word for them. I don't know, that I discovered. Apparently, that's a normal thing on exhaust systems to have those type of bolts. I'd never seen them before, but then again, I've pretty much only worked on Land Rovers and never seen that style of fitment to an exhaust before. And then the last thing really is the looks of it, which basically means I want to talk about that exhaust tip, because at first I was a little bit iffy about the look of this carbon fiber exhaust tip on my Jimny. Like, does this really go with this type of car? But having said that, two things. One, you don't notice that it's carbon fiber unless you're literally like looking right up against it. You know, any kind of normal distance you'd be standing from the car, you can't tell it's carbon fiber. It just looks like a black exhaust tip. And secondly, if you use the Jimny like I use mine, then it's pretty much always mucky, and yeah, you can't actually see it anyway. So in the end, I wasn't that bothered by it. It's a nice looking exhaust from the rear. For me, it was just like a weird thing of like carbon fiber, really, but yeah, it's a non-issue. I mean, I'm not bothered about that anymore at all. I quite like it now. Anyway, that is it for this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.